Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Tuesday, December the 30th, 2014. If this happens to be my last show of the year, I want to wish everyone a happy and prosperous new year for 2015, but we'll see as we move forward. However, I want to talk about the events that took place yesterday in the NFL. It's one of the most important days in the NFL, unfortunately, for some teams and for some individuals. It's called Black Monday, and Black Monday stands for coaches and GMs who's on the hot seat who may end up getting fired, or the teams actually end up firing them. And there was about 4 or 5 openings yesterday. Well, one really took place Sunday night. It was a mutual parting of the ways between the 49ers and Jim Harbaugh, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But then you had some other teams like the Jets who cleaned house with both firing the GM and the head coach. You had the Chicago Bears who also cleaned house by firing the GM and the head coach. I'll get back to these two teams in a minute, too. You also had the Atlanta Falcons who basically is cleaning house. I mean, they got rid of the head coach, and they basically stripped the GM of really any duties, because let's be honest, when he doesn't have a say, or he's not even part of the search for the new head coach, basically that means he has no authority, and so that's a fluid situation. So there's some openings, some job openings, and there's some intriguing ones. Atlanta is an intriguing job because, to me, it may really be the best job out there, because you got a franchise quarterback, you got a franchise wide receiver, you got a good team there. They just need the right direction. I've heard some mentions of a lot of people trying to stress or make the suggestion that Rex Ryan should go there, and Rex Ryan, who was the previous head coach of the Jets, who just got fired by the Jets, I've never been a big fan of as a head coach. Now, defensively, he is a brilliant mind. I'll give him that. Defensively, he got it. But unfortunately, I don't think highly of him as a head coach. But I'm going to throw a little love his way. Here's what you can say about Rex. His teams play hard for him, even to the bitter end. You can't say that about Mike Smith, because you can't say, you can sit here and tell me how much you love Mike Smith, how much you love this head coach, or you love that head coach, but your play will tell me whether that's really the case or not. And the Jets fought all the way, even to the bitter end. And them beating Miami the way they did it, I got to tip my cap to Rex, because at least they played hard knowing that he was not going to be there, because it is so easy for players when they know that the coach is gone to tune out the coach, to now all of a sudden start worrying about their dollars and cents instead of worrying about the overall team. So they played hard for him. So I got to at least give him a little love on that, because I saw on Sunday 2 coaches who got fired where their teams didn't play hard for them down the stretch. Atlanta basically, once Carolina punched them in the mouth, they laid down and said, "We're going home." They took their ball and went home. And Mike Smith had that sad puppy dog look on his face, like, you could just see he knew the end was it. And then you also had there in Chicago and Mark Trestman, the team just stopped playing. And regardless as to whose fault it is or whatever it is, it never looks good when the team just stops competing. Because especially when you're trying to go for a new job, those images is what people remember. Did the team play hard for you when everyone knew it was over? Because everyone in Jetland knew it was over. Everyone in Chicagoland knew. The rumblings were there. Even in Atlanta, when Arthur Blank hired a search firm, he hired a search firm weeks ago. So it was no secret that Mike Smith was a goner, barring a deep run in the playoffs. And even then, that might have not saved his job, but he had a better chance. But once he lost that final game the way he did, it made it easy for Arthur Blank to do what he did. So now, I thought mistakenly that the easiest job or the best job would actually be the 49ers. But in actuality, that is going to be the toughest job, because here's why. Whatever coach comes there, he has to replace a coach who in 4 years went to 3 straight NFC Championships game and a Super Bowl. And the only reason why they didn't do that this year is because of all the stuff that went on behind the scenes and things like that. That was why they didn't even make the playoffs this year. But they still finished with an 8-8 record, which is still respectable. The next coach has to come in and immediately, at the very least, get the team to the NFC Championship game. And whatever coach comes in, that first coach, he's going to be immediately compared to Jim Harbaugh. Fair or not, that's just the way it's going to work. I don't know if the 49ers were smart. I don't think the 49ers were smart in how they handled this. I understand Jim Harbaugh can be difficult, okay? But like I said, all great individuals are difficult. That's why they're great, because they could afford to be difficult. But the reality is, when you got a great coach, you don't want to let that coach go, because great coaches don't come off of trees. Okay? You don't, just don't. I mean, you went through, 8 years of losing before Jim Harbaugh got there. So keep those thoughts in mind. Okay? So, good luck to the next head coach who takes that job. The Bears and the Jets, they're intriguing for different reasons. The Jets have the number 6 pick in the draft. They have $40-something million to spend in salary, cap room. So I'm looking at the Jets situation as a potential good thing, where you can now hire your own head coach, which you could not do 2 years ago. So the Jets job became a lot more attractive. Then you have Chicago. The problem is you have the whole Jay Cutler mess. What are you going to do with that contract? Now, I'm going to just come out and say, I think the guy who's going to end up getting that job is Mike Shanahan, because when you're paying Jay Cutler that kind of money, guaranteed money that you got to pay him, you're not going to pay for him to be on another team, okay? And you still got to pay that money, unless you're willing to do an addition by subtraction thing. But I don't think the Bears is going to do that. This could be interesting, but I think Mike Shanahan is going to end up with that job, because Mike Shanahan likes Jay Cutler. He drafted Jay Cutler, and he wants to coach Jay Cutler. He kind of made that clear. So I would more or less give him the job. Now, as to who's going to be the GM there with the Jets and the head coach, I don't know. Who's going to be the head coach, and maybe even the GM there with the Falcons, I don't know. But we're going to see how that whole thing transpires. But now, out of all the openings, and like I said, there's 5 openings, because let's not forget about Oakland. Oakland, they're looking for a head coach. Oakland is not in as bad of a situation as everybody thinks they are. They got a foundation, because at least now they look like they seem to have the quarterback situation solved. Okay? They're close. They're not too far away. They just need the right leadership, and they actually have an opportunity. I don't know what their salary cap situation looks like at this moment, but they look like they're on at least now solid footing. They just need the right coach pulling the trigger. Now, this brings me to a team that I thought should have, at the very least, fired the head coach, or at the very least, put that head coach on notice. Because this head coach was going around beating his chest during the season about how he more or less, or acting like he fleeced the Redskins. I'm talking about Jeff Fisher. Excuse me. I'm talking about Jeff Fisher. Now, Jeff Fisher, let's go back to his history. He's like an analog coach in a digital age. Today it's about throwing the football down the field and stuff, and he wants to still more or less play the ground and pound. He took the air out of Air McNair. Now, see, here's the problem with that. That works if you got 2 things going for you. A dominant run game and a dominant defense, but you got to have, the most important thing, folks, in this league today is you got to have a quarterback. Because if you don't have a quarterback, I don't care how good your defense is, I don't care how good your running game is, without a quarterback, you have no chance. Ask Cincinnati how that's working out. Okay? Cincinnati, it could be is a team that could make a deep playoff run, but they will not because they got a quarterback that's really holding them back. He's good enough to get them to the dance, but he's not good enough to dance with them once they're there. Okay? But he's good enough to get you to the dance. Because you play a lot of bad teams during the season, so he can win those games and he'll get you to the dance, but that's as far as he can take you. Now, that being said, Jeff Fisher, folks, I think is overrated. I think he's overhyped and he's overrated. Here's why I say this. And I want you to think about this for a second. Back in 2012, he took the head coaching job there in St. Louis. Now, why is this significant? Because unfortunately, Sam Bradford, who was the quarterback at the time, and is still the quarterback, but at the time, he was under the old CBA agreement. Why is this important? Because under the old CBA agreement, there was no salary cap for rookies. So Sam Bradford had like $60 million guaranteed, $100 and something million contract as a rookie, okay? So at that time, when Jeff Fisher came in, I understood why he had to package those picks to trade down and get those picks. Because he could not draft an RG3 because they're paying too much money to Sam Bradford. And there was no way you was going to convince ownership to pay Bradford and to pay RG3. That wasn't going to happen. But here's what he could have done and what he should have done. When he got all those picks from Washington, 2 first-rounders and a number 2 and all that good stuff, okay? What he should have done was this. What I would have done is later on in the draft, maybe the 3rd round, 4th round, 3rd round, Russell Wilson was sitting out there. You could have drafted Russell Wilson, but you chose not to because you decided to ride Sam Bradford. Okay. That was your first mistake because Russell Wilson would have came cheap like he did for Seattle. He was drafted in the 3rd round. He's not making no money. So you could have drafted Russell Wilson. That could have worked. But you chose not to do that. And I think had you drafted Russell Wilson, you're sitting in a lot different position than you are today. See, I want to show you the difference and why quarterback is so important. When Seattle signed Matt Flynn to that 2-year, $10 million per year deal, okay? Average quarterback, average arm. But they still had a top-level defense. They still had a top-level running game. But the quarterback position was iffy. But when Russell Wilson came there, okay, he beat him out for the job. And that changed Seattle's fortune because I do not believe Seattle would have been a championship team last year if Matt Flynn's quarterbacking them. Because Matt Flynn would not have been good enough to win with this team. Now they would have just been a run-of-the-mill team. But when you get a quarterback with the intelligence and the smarts and the play of Russell Wilson, now a lot of things open up for you. Okay? So he could have, getting back to Jeff Fisher, he could have drafted a quarterback in the 3rd round in Russell Wilson. And you're paying him no money, you would have been in a different position. But let's say you didn't, because you did. Okay, that was 2012. 2013 was not a very good draft class. Basically, the 2 quarterbacks of note that came out of that draft is really E.J. Manuel and Geno Smith. Those were the only 2 quarterbacks of note that really came out of that draft. So I understood you didn't use a draft pick on a quarterback then because there was really nothing worth spending a draft pick on. But here's where I'm not going to let Jeff Fisher get away with. This past season, I told anybody and everybody who would listen that Teddy Bridgewater was the best quarterback in this draft. This draft included David Carr, it included Blake Bortles, and it included Johnny Manziel. And I said, Bridgewater is the best of all of them. I don't know much, but what I do know is quarterbacking. And I know good quarterbacking when I see it. And I know bad quarterbacking when I see it. I know a quarterback who's a winner, and I know a quarterback who is not a winner. You can just smell it. You can see it when they play. There's an electricity in the building with certain guys. Then there's okay, we got this guy. You can just tell it. Okay? So then now, Jeff Fisher had a chance to draft Bridgewater not once, but twice, and he failed. He had a chance to draft David Carr not once, but twice, maybe even 3 times, but he failed. So you telling me you got all these picks from Washington, including your picks, and you're sitting in last place. Here, that's unacceptable. Oh, but Sam Bradford got injured. Why are you depending on a quarterback who can't stay healthy? That is dumb. Why are you putting your eggs in that basket? And even to be really honest with you, even when he was healthy, he was not that good. He was not that good, folks, even when healthy. He's not going to win you the division. When I think of, and the problem is, if you're Jeff Fisher, you're in the toughest division in sports, or arguably the toughest division in sports. Here, all those draft picks you turned into good defensive players. So your defense is every bit as good as Seattle's, is every bit as good as Arizona's, and is every bit as good as San Francisco. But why are you sitting in last place with about less than 8 wins? Here, San Francisco imploded this year, and yet they still ended up getting more wins. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Tuesday, December the 30th, 2014. I was talking about Jeff Fisher and the division that he's in. He's in the Western Conference of the NFC West. Not the Western Conference, I'm sorry, the NFC West. The West Division. That division includes franchise caliber quarterbacks of Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, and a one-time franchise quarterback in Carson Palmer. And you're telling me you're trying to win with Sam Bradford. You've got to be joking. So instead of drafting Bridgewater this past all season, instead of drafting David Carr, 2 guys who I thought were immediate upgrades, but more importantly, they were healthy. They stayed on the field. They gave you 15, 16 games, which is more than what I can say for what Bradford is giving you. You could have drafted them as insurance. Why don't you draft the guy as insurance? Somebody who's going to change your franchise. Because you can't continue to sell this. Because he trolled out against a game against Washington, the players that he got out of those picks acting like he did something. You should be embarrassed. Because at least if I'm Washington, the way I would have came back at him is I would have said, yeah, okay, we're down, but at least we got a playoff run out of it. You didn't even get that. At least we got a 10-6 record out of it. What was your record those 3 years? So you might not want to be bloating and gloating, glorifying yourself and gloating. What are you gloating about? You've done nothing. And when a coach in your own division kind of puts you in your place, that even should embarrass you more. When he kept saying, when Bruce Arians, and I love Bruce Arians because you know why? He'll tell you what he's actually thinking. Okay? He has some Rex Ryan, but without the bravado. Without all that, we'll see the president in 4 years type of thing. But he has some Rex Ryan in him. But he's a much better coach than Rex. That's the difference. But that's not neither here nor there. But I like what he says. Everybody keeps talking about that 8-8 team, that team that, constantly 8-8 team over there. In other words, come on, are you serious? They've done nothing. That's what he's telling you. And he's right. So if I'm the owner, I'm removing you. Why didn't you draft a quarterback that you knew we needed? So I'm even doing one of 2 things. I'm either going to fire you, or what I would have most likely done is put you on notice. That's the route I would have most likely took. I would have said, Fisher, here's the edict. Get a quarterback or else. And if you're trying to sell me on Sam Bradford being the guy, or I'm a believer in Sam Bradford, okay, I tell you what. Pack your bags, you're out of here. Because you don't understand that this is a quarterback-driven league. You can have the running backs, you can have the defensive guy, you can have everything. But if you don't have the right man pulling the trigger, you're not going to win. You have no chance of winning. Okay? You see how Bruce Arians struggled once Carson Palmer went out. Look at Arizona's record once Carson Palmer went out, folks. That should tell you what you need to know. Look at Arizona's record since Carson Palmer went out. Here's another team that everybody's gloating and belly aching over, and oh my God, that this guy's so smart and stuff, and that's Bill O'Brien in Houston. Now, he should not be fired. He should not be put on notice. But I will be honest, he didn't get off to a good start. Not the start everybody thinks he did. Because let me explain to you why. When he took over the Houston job, Houston had talent. Houston was making the playoffs with Matt freaking Schaub. So that tells you they got talent. But Schaub imploded a year ago. He imploded. I mean, he had one of those years that is like, what the hell happened? So when he came in here, you had a chance. You knew the one thing you needed. If you're going to be in this division with Andrew Luck, yes, you need a defense. But more importantly, you need a trigger man. You need a quarterback. If you had a quarterback, guess what? You're in the playoffs. That's the difference, folks. It's minuscule. It's not a wide gap, folks, from being the worst to the best. It's not as wide of a gap as everybody wants to make it out to be. It's minuscule. Okay? But most of the time, that minuscule thing is that one key position, the quarterback. So instead of you drafting David Carr or Bridgewater, I told you to get Bridgewater. If you wasn't going to draft Menzel, because I was recommending you to actually draft Menzel. Not that I thought that Menzel was better than Bridgewater, because I didn't think he was better than Bridgewater, but because he was a Texans guy, oil money, it was the natural fit. But you didn't like Menzel's game. Okay, fine. Draft Bridgewater. But you didn't draft Bridgewater. You tried to get by with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Case Keenum, and Ryan Mallett. The same Ryan Mallett that sat on the bench in New England for all those years and didn't say a word about becoming a starter. And this is what you're trying to sell. So you wasted a great year by J.J. Watt. To me, J.J. Watt should be blaming his head coach for not winning Rookie of the Year. I mean, not Rookie of the Year, I'm sorry, for not winning the MVP. Because if you would have made the playoffs, his chances of winning the MVP would have greatly improved. But because you didn't make the playoffs, it's going to be hard for those who's going to justify a non-quarterback winning. Because the one knock now they got against you is, yeah, you had a great year, but the team still didn't make the playoffs. So how much of an impact did you really have? See the problem? Where if your team would have made the playoffs and you still had the great year, now you got the argument. That argument is no longer on the table. So, but this is the problem. Bill O'Brien failed to recognize this is a quarterback-driven league. Now, the problem is you don't won too many games this year when you can't get now either Mariota or Winston unless Winston or Mariota falls to you, which is not likely. So now where do you go for the quarterback spot? Because you're not going to address your needs there via free agency. You're not going to be able to address it there. So you know what I'm expecting next year? Another 9-7, 8-8 mediocre season. That's what I'm expecting there next year. And they're going to be bloating and telling you how great, oh my God, what a great job he's doing. No, he isn't. Look, even Mark Dominic, who's the GM there right now, at least as of right now, of Atlanta, when he came in 07, okay, after the whole Mike Vick, Bobby Petrino fiasco, Vick got sent off to prison. It was really 08, but Vick got sent off to prison, okay, and Bobby Petrino quit during the season, okay, And basically, Arthur Blank cleaned house. He hired Mark Dominic, and they hired Mike Smith. At least what was the first thing they went and did before they did anything else? They acknowledged we need a quarterback. They went, number 5 pick, Matt Ryan, known as Matty Ice. And the rest is history. They made the playoffs the first year with more or less the same team, but with the quarterback. See, that's how important the quarterback is, folks. That should be, if I'm taking over a program, or a team, if I don't have a quarterback, that's the first position I must address. Before any other position, that's the first position I have to identify. If I can't identify a quarterback to take over my team, then I'm not taking that job, because it's almost setting you up for failure, because the worst thing you can be in sports, in life, whatever it is, even the Bible says it, okay? You're neither hot nor you're cold. So you're lukewarm. I will spew you out of my mouth. That's what Jesus says in the Bible, okay? Or the Lord says in the Bible. Well, guess what? The worst thing you can be in life or in sports is mediocre. You either need to be at the top or you want to be at the bottom. But you never want to be in the middle, because in the middle, that means you're stuck. You're not good enough to be bad. You're not bad enough to be bad, but you're not good enough to be good. This is why, and I'm going to another sport real quick, but I'm going to transfer back to the NFL. This is why, this is a good thing that's happening with the New York Knicks. The Knicks is really, really bad. That's where you want to be. You don't want to be some team that's 30 and 50. Which means now you're in the middle. You don't want to be that team. You want to be that team that is 10 and 70 or something like that. That's the type of team you want to be. Really, really bad. Because why? Now you can get the most help. Because you're going to get the draft, and if you know what you're doing, you can get better faster. Back to the football. You want to be that team that's either all the way down near or at the bottom, because that means you either had a Super Bowl or a Super Bowl run, or you want to be the team that's really, really bad, which means you're near the top. See, look at the Jets. The Jets won about, was it 2 of their last 3 games, or 3 of their last 4 games? No. 2 of their last 4 games or something like that, where now they went from a potential 2 seed to now a 6 seed. Okay? If the Jets had the 2 seed, their job is even that much more attractive, because now you're in the running for a Winston or Mariota, where now you got to hope they fall, or what you're going to have to do is now trade up, which means now you got to give up future assets to do it, which is what you don't really want to do. Unless you think Geno Smith is the answer. And he has potential. You can see that. You saw what he did against Miami, who's supposed to have a good defense. You saw what he did. So he has potential. But the question is, does the next coaching staff and the next administration believe in that? Believe that. If they don't, now you got to find the guy. Because to me, that's the most important thing. Unless you get that position settled, nothing else matters. You can tell me about fixing this, you can tell me about fixing that, until you fix the quarterback position. Washington, I think you have the quarterback. But to me, what you need to now focus on is the offensive line and your defense. Fix those 2 areas, but particularly your offensive line, so you can protect your quarterback. And I'm referring to RG3. Okay? You got to protect your quarterback. Especially if you talk about being a passing quarterback. But this is not about Washington. This is about the Jets. This is about other teams. So if you're having trouble identifying the quarterback, you got a problem. Identify your quarterback. Because St. Louis, you can tell me about all these players you're drafting on defense. Unless you got the quarterback, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Take care. Have a good evening.